Welcome to Ordinary People, Extraordinary Connections, a podcast all about helping you comfortably connect with others in any situation. Hosted by Leanne and John, this podcast is proudly brought to you by Fortitude at Work. fortitudeatwork.com.au.
Welcome to Ordinary People, Extraordinary Connections. I'm John.
No, you're not.
Who am I then?
You're Leanne.
Okay.
I'm John.
You're John.
I am.
Oh, you're all Johns to me.
Oh, very funny. Very funny.
Yes.
Okay, what are we talking about in this one? We're obviously getting tired, and this is not fair for the
No, we're
listeners.
not getting tired. It's the start of a new episode,
so
a new week. It's beautiful.
That's a nice statement. I'm feeling a little tired, so...
Oh, are you?
Yeah, so hopefully you are just full of wisdom. Hopefully you're full of it today.
I'm always full of it, honey.
Okay, all right.
It sounds to me like you're a little bit mindful of your current situation.
I am. I'm very well aware of where I am at the moment.
So what are we talking about today, Johnny?
Mindfulness.
We are. We're talking about mindfulness.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we do devote an episode to it, because every single episode we've done actually refers to mindfulness.
It does at some point. In fact, I think you timed it in one of the podcasts. You said it's been 8 minutes or so since and before we talked about mindfulness. So we both recognise the value of it.
Yes.
The question is, what actually is it?
Yeah, what actually is it? Well, let me ask you first, though. How many years have you practiced mindfulness for, do you think?
If you consider that mindfulness, it's actually a bit of a hot topic, I think, in the therapeutic world. It's for the last few years. So a lot of people tout it and quote it.
Yeah, there's like mindful-based therapy, right?
That's it. Yeah, and it's and it gives it a bit of puts it up on a bit of a pedestal.
Yeah.
Which you could very easily think that it's something that's only been around for a few years.
Yeah.
When in fact it's a human behaviour, and it's always been there. So the question, how long have I practiced mindfulness, is I've always practiced mindfulness, just at different levels, because mindfulness is really just about witnessing your own thoughts.
Yeah.
So even as a child, there would be times when I noticed that I thought about something.
Yeah.
Or I remembered me thinking about something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always been there. It's just over the last few years, people have really honed in on the practice.
Yeah, and they've put some structure around it, I guess.
That's it, and with techniques and things like that, so that people can actually put procedures and processes in place to use mindfulness to have a better experience in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, always practice mindfulness, just and always will.
Okay.
And never be an expert. Just on my way.
Okay. Well, I think for me, I'm a little bit the same. Some level of self-awareness of what's going on in my own head. Maybe too because I was an only child. So, of course, I've had sisters and cousins along the way. But
you had to talk to someone.
That's right. I had to talk to someone. Might as well be myself.
Yeah.
And so quite a lot of creative thoughts going in my head as I amused myself along the way. But more specifically, from about 2013 onwards, do you remember I went to Byron Bay and I did a 5-day program on mindful self-compassion, which you did, I think, the year after or something.
Yeah, a couple of years later, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time actually feeling really scared about going and doing it, because it was about mindful self-compassion, which involved being aware of how you felt about yourself.
Yeah.
And learning to forgive yourself and learning to love yourself and all of those things. And I remember almost not going.
Yeah. Well, if you've said this in other podcasts, that the environment that you were raised in didn't have a lot of self-love, and there was a fair bit of criticism along the way. So for those of us that have that inner critic, and that one that doesn't love ourselves very often, it would be quite confronting to go and spend some time putting yourself first and caring for yourself and having self-compassion.
Yeah. But the techniques I learnt, the frameworks that you were talking about, that I learnt around mindfulness and using it as a tool to improve my mental health and to improve my self-talk has been invaluable.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's great stuff actually, and I use it every day, and I'm getting better at it. You know, we talked about that in some other episode. I'm not even going to reference it.
It's a muscle to exercise.
Yeah, it truly is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So tell me, what is it? You know, you're right. It's a fancy jargon term nowadays, but tell me what it is, Johnny.
Oh, it would only be my best guess from my experience, and I went to that same weekend. Week. Sorry. My experience of it, or my take, is that it's all around becoming a witness to self, and that is to.
I like that term, a witness to self.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I'm full of that sort of stuff.
You are full of it, aren't you?
It just flows out of me, doesn't it? Anyway, look, we're still here. We'll just carry on. That's the tired bit coming through. So, being a witness to self, and that is to recognise that the amount of chatter that goes on in my head in every situation I'm in, from driving to being in a meeting to being with a client to selling something. There's always this chatter that goes off in your head all the time about what's happening, what to say next, what did you say, could you have said that better?
Yeah, that's true.
Yep, and then so being aware of that chatter, and then almost standing outside yourself and listening.
Getting meta.
Yep, listening to that chatter. And you go, okay, I can hear myself doing this. I notice, and the clue again is when I feel bad or not good, that's the clue.
Yep.
So at any time anyone feels bad or not good, then there's a thought. There's been some thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay, that have attached itself to a button of yours.
Yeah.
That is now sending your thoughts often into a spiral of sadness or fear or anger. And the more you practice noticing when that happens to yourself, is the time for you to say, oh, okay, mindfulness. I've just witnessed something happening there, the thoughts that I'm having. I'm going to swap something in. I'm going to create a gap. I'm going to create a gap to swap in a new way of thinking, a new perspective on this situation, get a bit of awareness around what it is that I'm thinking and saying to myself, and come up with a different way, a better way.
Okay. So just so that I'm clear, is it typically a thought that spirals into a feeling, or is it a feeling that leads to a thought?
It's thought, feeling.
Thought, feeling.
Yeah. So, but it starts also with the environment. So what's happening around you? So when you wake in the morning, all of the information starts flying in all over the place. The stuff you're seeing, you're hearing, you're smelling, you're touching.
Is that an argument for not picking up your phone the minute you wake up?
Well, even then, that's a thought, and that's an action. So yeah, you are jumping into a day of cognitive behaviour, and your eyes and your ears and your skin, all of the information starts flying at 100 miles an hour, and we already know that we filter that. We filter levels of that. So if we were to be conscious of and present to everything that was being imported into our ears and our eyes and our skin, it would be overwhelming. So our brain puts in filters and says, I'm just going to let through the important stuff.
Right.
I'm just going to let through the stuff that helps me operate in the world.
Yeah.
Just enough.
Yeah.
And that's why you have different witness statements to the same event and things like that. And people have their filters in.
Okay, so they're perceptions.
Yeah, that's it. So if you are aware that you have all this input, and then your thoughts start coming in around what to do with it, right? So that is, I'm going to pick up my phone. I'm going to ring that person. I'm going to get dressed. I'm going to have a shower. I'm going to start worrying about that meeting. I'm going to get the car washed. Whatever it is, you have all these things that you're going to do now and later in each day. All those thoughts start flying in.
Okay.
So being aware of those thoughts and seeing the order, and that is consciousness when you wake up, all of the information flying in, the way you perceive it and filter it,
right,
and then the thoughts that start creating how you feel.
How do you get to the point where you've got enough time to think about the thoughts before they've had an impact on your feelings?
Sort of happens the other way around. Sort of strange.
Okay.
So it's the thoughts happen.
Yeah.
the feeling is felt. The gap that we're going to give you some techniques in a minute on how to create,
Yeah.
where you can witness the thoughts and
Yeah.
the feelings, and then the techniques to change your thinking and your head talk around those thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Because I imagine that that's where the practice comes in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is to be able to create the gap.
Yeah, that's it. And we've got a whole bunch of techniques around being in the now and meditation and self-awareness.
Okay. So should we talk about that now? Should we talk about the techniques?
Sure.
And go there? I know I try to meditate. I used to be quite good at meditating every day,
Yep.
pretty much every day. But particularly since we've moved, and I love, where we've moved to. It's fantastic. But I just don't feel I have created for myself a space.
Sort of strange because where we were living, you were more connected to the earth physically.
Yes.
We were on the ground at sea level,
Yes.
and about 10 feet from
That's right.
from the grass and the water
Yes.
and the scenery. Whereas we've now moved into a building,
Yes.
which is physically disconnected from the earth.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And I've not created a space to be able to take time out and do that. And
I have, but it's a bit cold out there.
yes, you
moment.
have actually.
Yeah.
You have. You've done quite well. But I haven't. And I need to get back to that because the whole practice of meditation I found personally challenging when I first started. I was unable to be still and still my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was unable to come to a place of clearing my mind and being free of thoughts and just being present. I found myself constantly going, "Oh my God, look, you're not thinking."
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking. I'm thinking. I'm not thinking.
I'm thinking, I'm not thinking. Oh, look, now I'm talking to myself.
Yes. See? Oh, hang on. I'm supposed to not be thinking that I'm thinking.
right.
Oh, I'm thinking again.
That's right. I'm thinking again.
Yeah. Concentrate on breath. There's a breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in. Oh, look at that bird.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then I remember doing some training around it where it was actually okay to let the thoughts come in.
Yeah.
And then to wish the thoughts away. So to kind of go, oh, I'm just going to take notice. Yes, I'm thinking of it. Oh, I'm just going to take a breath now and clear my mind. So then I tried doing that for a while. But then again, I spent all my time kind of forgiving myself that I was thinking and, oh, we'll just let that thought in.
Yeah.
Let that thought wash away.
Yeah.
Off it goes, off you go. And then there's another thought and off it goes. But what I actually discovered is a fantastic app that's on my phone called the Insight Timer.
Yep.
And with the Insight Timer, you can actually do a number of guided meditations. There's hundreds of them. But I have a couple of people that I really like that do guided meditations. And so they're actually doing the talking for me.
Yeah.
And I find that when I'm focusing outwards on what they're saying, and for some people, the equivalent to that is they're focusing on their breathing.
Yeah.
Right. But for me, I'm focusing on somebody else's voice. I'm actually not thinking
Yeah.
about me. I'm not present to me. I've kind of just am me.
We talked about when we talked about mindfulness and how it being a hot topic, and meditation as well.
Yeah.
It's been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But it's definitely what's the word? Come into our Western culture in
Yeah.
a big way. But once again, it wasn't around meditation. The thing, it was around human beings finding the value in the spaces between the thoughts
Yeah.
and the space in between a breath in and a breath out. It's about getting those little glimpses of the spaces in between. Eckhart Tolle, who's really big on the power of now,
Yeah.
explained that it's the no thing
Yeah.
is where the value is, and practicing that by either external input, by listening to guided meditation,
Yeah.
by concentrating on your breathing, by noticing and forgiving yourself for thoughts and,
Yeah.
and letting it go and coming back to the now. If during a meditation of 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes or an hour, you get split seconds of the no thing
Yeah.
in between the breath in and breath out, or in between the thoughts, is where all the value is. And so you don't have to
Yeah,
have
that's so true, isn't it?
yes, you don't have to have an hour of not thinking.
Yeah.
You just have seconds in that hour
Yeah.
of no thinking, and the value will come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. That's absolutely spot on. And, a collection of seconds is good enough.
Absolutely.
You're listening to Ordinary People, Extraordinary Connections. Do you want to spread the word in your workplace, community, team, or school? We're available to speak at your event or deliver customised training. Visit fortitudeatwork.com.au for more info.
The other thing it does for me, and we're just talking general meditation here, is because I do quite a number of self-compassion meditations, guided self-compassion meditations, and if there is something going on in the family particularly, so, there might be one of the older kids has got some turmoil happening at that point in time, or one of the younger kids has got something going on for them, but they're not actually near me, but I want to be near them. Meditation, guided meditation in compassion, allows me a means to envelop them in my love.
Yeah.
And I feel closer to them, like I'm doing something with them. And even though I'm not seeing them,
Yeah.
and I may not see them for a week and the issue's gone,
You feel more connected.
I
and
feel
closer.
so much more connected because because I can actually visualize that I am hugging them in my love. And it's like a cocoon. That's how I imagine them. They're in a cocoon from me.
That's beautiful.
And that's, I think that's the power of meditation. It allows you to connect on a spiritual level
Okay.
with others too. And it's very peaceful.
It is. It's true. And the value of becoming, you can be more focused, more able to make decisions, more able to reset yourself. So when the podcast isn't on meditation, but in mindfulness world, that is one of the tools, definitely.
Yeah, right.
Because it brings you into the now.
Yeah.
And it helps you to focus and to make decisions and to be aware of your thoughts.
Yeah, great.
Right? So you're practicing being aware of your thoughts. You're practicing being a witness to your own thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's the value of meditation with mindfulness.
Yeah, fantastic. And all we really have, as we've said, I think, 10,000 times before, is right here, right now.
Yeah.
In fact, that's all we have. We can imagine a future, we can think about the past, but we can only live in right in this second.
And we are at the mercy of our now thoughts.
Yeah, we are, aren't we?
Yeah. So the value of mindfulness and being in the now cannot be understated, because it actually is everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true, isn't
Because
it?
if now is everything and your thoughts are you, then being aware of your thoughts in the now is where it's all at.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So go on, sorry.
So let's talk about creating that gap.
Yep.
To recognise. So let's talk about how we can go about. So we've talked about meditation.
Which helps you create that gap.
Yeah, helps you to create the gap. What else could people do to create a gap?
Self-awareness. So self-awareness is not just about the now, it's about the past and your fears around the future. So being aware of the person you are and how you've come to be this person, and what the programs that were put into you along the way that gave you all the values and the beliefs and the sense of self. So the more awareness you have around who you are and why you are the person you are today will help you create that gap. Because it's so if you've had a history of a childhood with traumatic events, or you've had negative influences and losses and things along your life, they create triggers or buttons.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's those triggers and buttons that actually get in the way of the now.
Yeah.
So if you become more self-aware of your history, more self-aware of your fears and your buttons and your triggers. So, and once again, the clue is we're not feeling good.
Yeah.
So if something happens and you feel that in your body, in your chest, or your stomach or whatever, you go, okay, there's my trigger.
Yeah.
What was my trigger about again? And one of the key ways to do that is to talk about it.
Yeah.
Is to actually put yourself in front of an unconditionally loving person
Right.
who is willing and able to be present without an agenda of fixing you.
Yeah.
Okay, someone
Just
like
listen.
just someone like a counsellor or someone that you know,
Yeah.
a friend or a relative that you know are good listeners,
Yeah.
and that way, and that you feel safe
Yeah.
to talk about anything.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about your childhood experiences, the negative ones. You don't have to relive them,
Yeah.
just review them.
Yeah.
Okay, and the impact that they may have had on your life.
Yeah.
And the more you know about that, the more opportunity those triggers and those buttons don't get in the way of the now and that gap that we're talking about.
Okay. And so I guess what you're saying there too, if I could expand on that, is that self-awareness doesn't have to be instantaneous. And what we have as human beings is this incredible gift of reflection.
Yeah.
So we might become aware of our habits when we begin to see patterns in behaviour
Yep.
in ourselves.
Yep.
When we have time to sort of reflect on, oh, that didn't go too well and what it was. So you don't have to be in the now, in the moment to be able to say, hang on a second, let me just catch that thought. You can actually be in bed and go, this morning I was probably a bit arrogant there, or I was a bit of a dick, or I was, do you see what I mean? You can reflect on it, can't you?
Yeah, it's the processing period. So if you, once again, you're in the now thinking about what happened this morning.
That's right.
And you're noticing a discomfort with that.
Yeah.
Then you go, okay, there was a discomfort about what happened this morning. What's that all about? Oh, that's right. That's about someone said something to me that hit my trigger around my self esteem, and that's sat with me all day.
Yeah.
So I've now got awareness around that, and the beauty or the magic in this is the more you become self-aware of those triggers and those buttons, the less power they have.
Yes.
And the less often they occur and the less extreme they are in affecting your life.
Yeah. And it's okay, though, for that awareness it'll come when it comes.
Yes, to trust
And that's
it.
okay. Can I tell a story about that?
Absolutely.
Excellent. And you know this story extremely well. We're only talking about it, I think, this morning. We were away on holidays, and we had, as we did every year, we had this cabin, and we had a whole heap of people, kids, friends of friends, whatever, all staying with us in this cabin. And it was really at the peak of Billy Goat Soap stressful days, extremely stressful days, although I didn't know that was the label for it at that point in time. It was just life.
Yeah.
We're at the peak of life with Billy Goat, I guess. And we had funded and paid for this cabin, and we'd gone away, and then we had some people, and we'd all been working extremely hard, and this is a bit of downtime. And one of the kids had bought a bar of palm olive soap or something in the shower. And I had taken great offence to that because I felt that I'd spent my entire, previous 12 months fending off, all of these much cheaper brands to maintain and protect the category that Billy Goat Soap had worked so hard to get and to build our customer base. And here I was trying to relax on holidays, and somebody had actually bought that bar of soap into the house, and my battle was on again.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt. And I let that person know in no uncertain terms that I felt it was disloyal, or whatever was the terrible term I used, that it was disloyal to bring in, a really cheap bar of palm olive soap when, we're here because of Billy Goat Soap, really.
Yeah.
And it was an awkward and horrible reaction that I had at the time, which I felt at the time, I guess, was justified because I was exhausted, and this is where we're at. I did apologise later on for saying that, because everyone should bring whatever they want at whatever time, but to use at any time. But my point is that really wasn't probably until about 6 to 12 months later when I think about, and I will never forget that experience, but when I think about that experience, that I'm able to understand that that came from a place of stress.
Yeah, it's one of your triggers.
Yeah.
One of your buttons.
Yeah. And I was actually in a highly stressful state.
Yeah.
And that's how that came about.
Yeah.
And it was only through the power of reflection that I was able to notice how I was feeling.
Yeah.
I was able to notice what I was thinking and recognize that I wouldn't make those choices again. Now I've actually learnt from that.
Yeah.
And I've forgiven myself for that.
So not holding any regret or shame.
Yeah.
You just trusted that the pace of your awareness.
Yeah,
along
that's
the
right.
way.
So I wasn't aware at the time. And in fact, it's okay now to not
yeah,
be aware.
Absolutely. Everyone has their journey.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it. And the pace of your self-awareness.
Yeah.
And anyone listening to this that's looking for strategies or a more of a clearer understanding of mindfulness are at that point in their lives where they're listening to something like this.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's it. So there's no, and even if you get something from this, to not even think for a second, oh, I wish I'd known this earlier.
Yeah.
Because earlier you weren't interested. So,
Yeah, that's right.
So you trust your pace.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Do you think you also have to have a high degree of personal honesty to be mindful? Do you have to be able to admit in your own head, not tell anyone else,
Yep.
but admit in your own head, that hurt me, or I'm feeling sad about that?
Well, yeah. Well, as I said, if you are not feeling good,
Yeah.
and you're carrying a weight of not feeling good, then most people will get to a point where they go, I don't want to do this anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Good
they go,
point.
okay, so it's exhausting, or I've had enough, or it's the same cycle.
Yeah.
I keep coming against the same things all the time, and the timing then is, okay, I want to try another way.
Yeah, I need to do something
I
different.
have to do something different. And they go, okay, I've listened to John and Leanne's podcast. They reckon a bit of meditation, coming into the now, spending some time with an unconditionally loving person or a counsellor or someone like that.
Yeah.
Other things, another thing was with coming into the now and the value of the now.
Yeah.
And creating that gap so that you can swap the negative thoughts with positive ones when they come in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And also being mindful around other things in the now that you can be mindful around, which is mindful eating. So when you're eating things, to actually take the time to taste them
Yeah.
from start to finish, and to mindful visualizing, that is to when you're walking down a path, to actually notice the
Do you
things
know,
around you.
that practice of mindful walking is perhaps something that I love the most. I love it because when I'm walking, and I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to walk, I'm going to, wear a headset and listen to a podcast like this one.
Yep.
And those people probably still should do that,
Yep.
subscribe
Yep.
and listen. But for me, I would probably never do that because I absolutely love the sound of the wind in the trees. I love the fact that I can walk on old leaves and they go crunch, crunch, crunch.
Yep.
Or if I'm down near the water, I can hear the water lapping. And I love the fact that I actually do hear all of that.
Yeah, it's mindful witnessing.
Yeah, it's great.
From all of your senses.
Yeah,
So you're
it's
noticing
great.
the crunch under the feet. You're looking at the leaves. You're looking at the water. You're looking at and animals. There's another thing. We'll talk about that again in a second. But being in the present and creating that gap that we're talking about is to practice all those things. So when you are walking, notice the flowers, notice the grass. Take the time, and it's a self-caring, self-loving exercise.
And at the risk of sounding corny, it's like a complete body workout. It really is. It's like you're using, and I think we talked about this before we pressed record, but it's about using all of your senses. And is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Employing all of your senses.
Even our first podcast here in the studio, you noticed, I noticed that the smell, it has that sort of rustic, and it's probably a little bit of dampness or something. I don't know, whatever it is. But
I don't.
there you go. But it reminded me of our cabin up in the woods.
Yeah,
And thinking, and that created a feeling. So you notice the smells, you notice the sounds, you notice what you're looking at, you notice the taste when mindfully eating, and also when you're present to another human being, to actually be present to that person, look them in the eye.
Yeah.
To stay present to them and to nod and to be and to all those minimals we talked about in the counselling
Listening
podcast.
episode, I think it was,
That's
wasn't it?
it, yeah. So
Yeah.
every opportunity to be in the now will
Yeah.
help, and practicing that will create that gap so that when the negative thoughts come in, you can notice them, witness them, be aware of the origin of them, and replace them with self-loving talk
Yeah.
around being good enough and smart enough.
Yeah.
And also forgive yourself for the past,
Yeah.
and to recognise that you only have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And one of the things I think I took away from, we were talking about that whole Byron Bay trip thing, and one of the things I took away from that is that notion of universality in emotion and in feeling, and understanding that your shame or your fear or your regret is not unique to you, and that we actually all share in those feelings. And I remember initially hearing about that when I went away and thinking that gives me no comfort because I still feel shame.
Yep.
Gives me absolutely no comfort. But in fact it does, because it proves that I'm not alone in those experiences.
Yeah.
We don't talk about them to one another. I mean, you and I do, but I mean the general population. You don't sit down next to someone and go, well, how shameful was your day?
Yeah.
So we don't actually talk about that. But just knowing that, in fact, all of us will experience some level of shame, sadness.
You're not alone.
Yeah, and you're not alone is actually quite comforting. So when I'm in the gap, depending on, what thoughts or feelings I'm having at the time, but when I'm in the gap, I will often now say to myself, you're not the only one feeling this.
Yeah.
This is not unique to you. We're all feeling it. Yeah. And in fact, I'll find myself many times if I'm speaking to a small business person who will say, I work as a accountant and I work in my office at home and I feel so alone and isolated from everybody. I will often say, you're not alone, because there's many people that have those similar feelings and those similar concerns.
You're not alone at being alone.
Yeah, and there's some comfort in that, I think, in knowing that you're not alone.
It. Yeah, and the oneness movement is that we are all connected and part of the one organism.
Yeah.
And you said before that when you went to that mindfulness weekend, and you've also said in other podcasts about mimicking centered people.
Yeah.
With that connectedness that we have around human beings, if you're with someone who is self-loving and in the present, it does have an effect on the people around them.
Yes.
And it's and often it's a little magical, because you spend some time with those people and you walk away feeling better.
Yeah, that's exactly
and you
right.
Thought there wasn't anything said. It was just being in the presence of people that had self-compassion and presentness and
a centeredness.
A centeredness, yeah.
Yep.
It actually it what's the word I'm looking for? It ripples.
Yeah.
Yeah. It goes out and goes out to everyone around you.
Yeah, and that I agree completely. And they are the sorts of people that you want to be around, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's a kind of a peace and an unconditional feeling to them.
Yeah, there's a peacefulness around it, and it's not that they're like a guru or up on a pedestal. Even they're very human,
and they're in the moment,
and they're very open and honest, authentic.
Yeah.
Loving, self-loving, and outwardly loving people.
Yeah, and they're not worried about what's happened in the past.
No
or
agendas.
Yep, no agenda. Not worried about what's going on in the future. They're just present to you right now. And isn't it Oprah that said fundamentally what we all truly want is just to be heard?
Yeah, and to have a sense of belonging.
Yeah,
and having a value and a voice.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Something to aspire to and something to practice.
Yes. Now I have a little quote here that I was wanting to share today, particularly knowing that we would be talking about mindfulness, and I think this comes from Christopher Gerber, who Gerber, I think it's Gerber, who is I guess one of the founders of the mindfulness movement in more traditional medicine, empirical type studies. Yep. And he says that a moment of self-compassion can change your entire day. and that a string of such moments can change the course of your entire life.
Yeah, beautiful words.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yes.
So, Johnny, is there anything else you want to say about mindfulness?
No, I'm mindful that I am getting tired, but I'm also thought that was really good.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this, and it has inspired me to go back and create my meditation space in our current home,
And
our new home.
It's inspired me to keep practicing because we're all a work in progress.
Yes.
And I carry fears and I carry shame and I
Yep.
spend too much time in the past and too much time in the future.
Yeah, don't we all?
So it's inspired me to be more in the now as well.
Good. Well, thank you, and we'll see you next week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Ordinary People, Extraordinary Connections with Leanne and John. Connect with us via Facebook at Fortitude at Work. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. See you next time.